The road to the high Atlas Mountains is treacherous enough during the day, but at night it feels like driving into the throat of a beast. Youssef, a cynical architect from Casablanca, never believed in the old stories. He didn't believe in magic, and he certainly didn't believe in Jinn. So when he bought an abandoned, crumbling Kasbah near the remote village of Taznakht, he planned to turn it into a luxury guest house, dismissing the local superstitions. The locals called the house Dar Al-Mamsoukh, the distorted house. They refused to step inside, not even for good pay. It was his first night alone on the property. The old caretaker, Brahim, a man whose face was mapped with deep wrinkles, had left in a hurry before the sun dipped behind the peaks. Sidi Youssef, Brahim had whispered, clutching his prayer beads, his voice trembling slightly. When the Maghrib call to prayer ends, lock the heavy wooden door. Do not play music, and if you hear your name called from the courtyard, do not answer. Youssef had just laughed, lighting a cigarette and waving a dismissive hand. Go home, Brahim. I have work to do now. At 11 p.m., the silence of the mountains was heavy. It pressed against his ears, a physical weight. The only light came from a single bare bulb hanging in the vast tiled courtyard. The house was a masterpiece of old architecture. With intricate Zellige tiles covering the floors and walls in mesmerizing geometric patterns, Youssef was sketching on a table in the center of the courtyard when he smelled it. It wasn't the smell of dust or old wood. It was the thick, sweet, suffocating scent of joey and fassock-strung incense often used in rituals. The smell was wafting from the room directly across the fountain. The room he had found locked earlier that day. He stood up, his heart beginning a slow, heavy thud against his ribs. Brahim, is that you? Did you come back? Only silence answered. Then, a new sound. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It sounded exactly like heavy leather slippers bell dragging across the mosaic floor, but the courtyard was empty. He scanned every shadow, every corner. Nothing. The sound was coming from inside the locked room. Youssef grabbed a heavy flashlight from his bag and walked toward the door. The wood was ancient, carved with geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe if you stared at them for too long. He reached for the cold, ornate handle. Knock, knock, knock. 3 distinct, deliberate knocks came from the inside of the door. Youssef froze, his hand hovering in the air. His lifelong skepticism began to crack, splintering like old plaster. Who is in there? He yelled, his voice straining to sound authoritative. A voice answered. It wasn't a shout, it was a whisper, dry as desert sand, and it was right next to his ear. You are standing on my chest. Youssef spun around, his flashlight beam cutting wildly through the darkness. Nobody, nothing. He was completely alone. Suddenly, the single light bulb above the courtyard exploded with a sharp pop, showering sparks onto the tiles below. Darkness swallowed him instantly. The only illumination now came from the moonlight filtering through the open roof, casting long, twisted shadows from the ancient pillars. That's when the fountain in the center of the courtyard started to gurgle. It had been dry for 50 years. Youssef pointed his flashlight at it, his hand shaking. A thick black liquid was oozing from the spout. It wasn't water, it looked like tar, viscous and unnatural. As it spilled over the edges of the fountain's basin, the liquid didn't flow randomly, it moved with a horrifying purpose. It slithered across the tiles, filling the grooves of the Zellige, tracing the geometric star patterns on the floor. The black lines raced across the courtyard, moving directly toward Youssef's feet. He stumbled back, gasping for air, and slammed into the cold stone of the wall behind him. The temperature dropped so fast he could see his own breath fogging in the moonlight. The sweet, cloying smell of incense was gone, replaced by the gut-wrenching stench of sulfur and rotting meat. From the shadows of the locked room, which was now slowly, silently creaking open, a figure emerged. It was tall, far too tall to be human. It wore a white djellaba, the traditional Moroccan robe, its hood pulled low over where a face should be. But as it stepped into a sliver of moonlight, Youssef saw its feet, where human feet should have been. He saw hooves, polished, dark goat hooves, clacking against the tiles. Clack, clack, clack. The figure stopped in the center of the courtyard. It slowly lifted its head. There was no face inside the hood, just a smooth, pale, featureless surface of skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Youssef couldn't breathe. He couldn't move. He was paralyzed, like the Jatham of old nightmares, but he was terrifyingly wide awake. The entity raised a hand. Youssef's mind reeled as he saw that its fingers were backward, the palms facing outward in a grotesque gesture. Leave, the voice echoed, not in the air, but directly inside Youssef's skull, a vibration that shook him to his core. This ground was poured with blood before your grandfather was born. The pact is not finished. Primal survival instinct finally shattered his paralysis. Youssef scrambled to his feet and ran for the heavy main door. He grabbed the huge iron latch and pulled. Locked. He pulled again, his fingers slipping, screaming in pure terror. Open, open. Behind him he heard a low, guttural growl that sounded like a horrifying mix of a laughing man and a braying donkey. The clack, clack, clack of the hooves was getting faster, closer, echoing off the ancient walls. Youssef fell to his knees, his mind frantically searching for something, anything. He began reciting the only prayer he could remember from his childhood, Ayat al-Kursi, the throne verse. He stammered, messing up the words, his voice shaking uncontrollably. As he spoke the sacred words, the heavy wooden door suddenly unlatched with a violent bang. swinging open into the cold night air as if kicked by an invisible force. Youssef didn't look back. He ran blindly down the rocky path, leaving his car, his keys, his expensive laptop, and his entire project behind. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out, collapsing on the main road. Hours later, a passing truck driver found him, shivering and muttering about the hooves. Youssef never went back to the Kasbah. He sold the land for less than half its price to a foreign investor, desperate to rid himself of the property and the memories it held. 2 months later, Youssef received an email from the new owner. It was a picture of the renovation progress. The caption read, "Look what we found under the tiles in the locked room. Amazing history." Attached was a photo of the floor. The tiles had been pulled up. Underneath lay the complete skeleton of a man, buried vertically, facing the wall. Wrapped around the skeletal remains was a rusted iron chain, and that chain was attached to a specific, unique tile in the wall. On the plaster above the skeleton, crudely scratched into the wall, were words in Old Arabic, "Do not break the seal." In the bottom corner of the photo, standing deep in the shadows of the doorway, just barely visible, Youssef saw a pair of feet hooves.